Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Barker,
Here.
McCain,
Here.
Wertz, Johnson,
Here.
Rust,
Here.
Hanfelder,
Here.
Trent,
Here.
Griffin.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now's the time for public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to address the board? The format for our board is that everyone is given 3 minutes to address the board.
Good evening. It is an honor to be here at Lewis and Clark, where I did graduate. To President Traska, I would like to read a letter that you received from Attorney Luther Simmons so that the board could hear it. From the desk of Luther W. Simmons, February 13, 2023, Dr. Kenneth Traska. Termination of Kavon Lacey. Dear President Traska, this is Luther Simmons, Attorney Simmons, former judge. I am a lifetime resident of Alton, a retired judge, and the first African-American employee at Lewis and Clark Community College from 1970 to 1971. I have been involved in the community affairs in Alton for 50 years. Sir, I am reaching out to you to express a collective sense of community outrage at the termination of Kavon Lacey. Perhaps you're unaware that Kavon Lacey is an Alton icon both in the African American and the non-minority community. In Kavon's 4 years of being an exemplary student athlete at Alton High School, 4 years as a scholar athlete at Evansville University, 7 years as a Division I graduate assistant, director of basketball operations and assistant coach at Evansville University. Kavon's performance and reputation was beyond reproach. For this Alton native to be terminated in his hometown in what seems like a subjective and whimsical manner by an athletic director who is not yet a part of this community is extremely troubling. On behalf of the Black community, we are requesting a meeting at your earliest opportunity to discuss this far-reaching affront to the Alton community at large. This matter is urgent and pressing, and we anticipate a prompt response. I would just like to add, my name is Danny Holliday, retired pastor of 24 years here in Alton, Victory Baptist Church. I was a member of the Alton School Board, served in combat in Vietnam, where I was a hospital corpsman, front line 7 months. I received an award for working in the emergency room, received a commendation, Marine Corps commendation. I love this country. I believe all lives matter, not just Black lives. And I just wanted to come to you and to the board and share with you not only Mr. Simmons' feelings, but a lot of people's feelings. I do know Kavon to be an excellent individual, very much involved in the community here at the university here. He has children that are outstanding in school and in sports. And I'm insulted. Okay, thank you. I'm insulted at what happened. I hope you'll consider.
Good evening. I'm Chris Slusser, Madison County Treasurer, Wood River resident, and a 1997 alum of Lewis and Clark Community College. It's good to be back out here on campus. And I came tonight because my good friend Chuck Hanfelder is going to be his last meeting. He's retiring from the board, and I just wanted to recognize and honor him. I've got to know Chuck probably about 18, 19 years ago when I first got into politics. Chuck, you know, the county now is kind of dominated by Republicans, all the county offices, the judicial seats and everything. But Chuck was a Republican long before it was cool to be a Republican in this county, in this area. And so he took a lot of young guys like me and Jason Plummer and a lot of others, Andy Carruthers, who's a judge now, Amy Mayer, who's a judge. A lot of us, he would take us under his wings and mentor us, and it was like a father figure to all of us. And Chuck, we just appreciate your service. Chuck is a decorated Korean War veteran. We thank you for your service there. A great businessman, a great friend. And we built a personal relationship. I remember, I'll tell a couple quick stories. So there was a time when Chuck got sick. It was about, I guess, almost 8 years ago. And my wife made some muffins, and we dropped them off for Chuck. And a couple weeks later, he came back by with the basket. He wanted to return it. And no one else in our life except our immediate family had known about this, but we had just adopted our first child, and we just brought her home from the hospital. And no one had got to see her yet. Chuck was the first one that got to see her. And it was a special moment that we always will remember. Chuck's also a jokester too, and he always has a funny joke. And one of my favorites was he would call himself a prohibitionist. He said, when someone sends a beer my way, I prohibit it from going any further. So Chuck, thank you so much for your years of service on this board and just for being a great friend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll have the audit presentation by Whipley.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have two visitors from Whipley that are here to present the college's fiscal year 22 audit. To my left is Sarah McKenna. She is a senior manager with Whipley's nonprofit and government practice. She has more than 10 years of experience providing audit services to governmental entities, including community colleges. And online virtually tonight we have Matt Sheeler. He's a partner at Whipley and the nonprofit and government practice. His primary focus is on audit services. Sarah has prepared a short PowerPoint tonight to cover the highlights of the audit. Each of you has a hard copy at your place if you're interested in keeping that. Otherwise, leave it behind. We'll collect them afterwards. And with that, I'll introduce Sarah.
Thank you, Mary. Good evening. Thank you guys for having me. I am just going to go through a little bit of the audit recap for the year. But before I get into that, I did want to just kind of touch base on Whipley's commitment to community colleges and the industry in general. So I listed out some of our community college clients in Illinois just to kind of show the experience and help explain, this is the main reason why our firm has a commitment to colleges, is because we have a decent client base there. And so we do dedicate significant resources and time commitments and just to get a good understanding. So one of the things that we do is we actually have recently carved out education as a sub-industry within Whipley. And so that allows us to create specialists within that industry. And we also, within the Illinois Community College CFO conference every year, we always sponsor and attend those conferences to kind of stay up to date on the hot topics for the year and things like that. And then we are business members of the NACUBO and CACUBO associations, both, just to kind of stay up to date as well on those things. We do send our staff to specialized trainings for the financial aid program, and so we do have some specialists in-house related to that program. So just wanted to kind of just highlight, that we are committed to serving Lewis and Clark. We're committed to the industry, and we've kind of put our resources in that area. All right, so I'll go into some of the audit highlights here. And if you guys have questions along the way, feel free to stop me and ask them. No worries there. So overall, there's a total of 6 opinions in the audit report. The first one is the independent auditor's report on the financial statements, and I'm happy to report we issued a clean, unmodified opinion on those. And then within ICCB, we actually issue 3 opinions there. 2 of them relate to the state adult education program. So we have an opinion on the financial statements themselves, which is a clean, unmodified opinion. And then we also issue a report on any compliance issues with state adult education. And we did not have any issues there based on our testing. So happy to report that. And then we also do, we call it like an enrollment data audit or credit hour audit. And that is required by ICCB. And based on that testing, we also issued a clean, unmodified opinion on that information. The next opinion is what we call the government auditing standards opinion, and really it's more just like a report where we would identify any internal control deficiencies or any non-compliance with, state laws or contracts or grant agreements. And happy to report we did not have any findings there either. And then the last opinion we have is the opinion on the uniform guidance. And this is what over your major federal programs. And so this year we tested the Education Stabilization Fund as your major program for the year. And so that is, maybe you're more familiar with the terms of like the HERF grant or the GEAR grant. So together those 2 make up this Education Stabilization Fund. But we issued a clean opinion on the directed material compliance requirements for that program. But we did have 1 reporting compliance finding. And that relates to, actually I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail on that coming up here. But I will say about that, there were a few other of our colleges that had that finding as well. And I'll kind of go into that detail here in a few minutes. All right, so, and this is one of the, it might be a little hard to read, which is one of the reasons I gave the handout for you guys tonight, just to kind of help with that. It's just kind of a summarized financial information from current year to prior year. This information is also somewhat summarized in the management discussion and analysis section of the big bound report you have in front of you. So I'm gonna leave this slide up. But the notes I'm going to talk about are actually on the next page, but I'm just going to kind of have this up here so that you guys can see that. So in total, the 21 column, I do want to preface, the 21 column will tie to the prior year report, financial report, but the individual rows that make up the categories may be different. We did have some reclassifications and things like that, but we did not, for the purpose of the presentation, we did not restate 21. We did have some prior period adjustments in the audit this year, but we did not restate for those. But we did restate for any reclassifications that we had. And the prior period adjustments are noted in note 12, as I have down there at the bottom. Just want to point that out. And I will touch on those. So assets and deferred outflows of resources increased $12.2 million for the year. And most of that relates to the cash that you guys have in your capital development trust accounts. Those increased about $12.8 million. So that is the main reason for the increase in the current assets. And then kind of just looking at some of the other big jumps, there was the CSRS and SIP on behalf contributions from the state. There's a revenue and expense that relates to those. But the on behalf contributions decreased approximately $5.4 million this year. So when you're looking at like the total operating expenses and you see it decreased $3.4 million, $5.4 million of a decrease is related to the on behalf payments. I just want to kind of point that out. And those contributions are determined by the state. So it's not anything, we just get that information from them and report on it. But federal revenues went up this year, so that's good. And most of that relates to that increased funding for the Education Stabilization Fund, the HERF grant. That increased about 2.7 million. The grant itself increased about 2.7 million for the year. So when you're looking at that increase for the year, most of that is related to that grant. And then I'll note that all of the cash and deposits of the college were properly collateralized at the banks, so no risk there related to those. And then also, I just want to point out some new items that you might see in the audit report that maybe were different from last year. So one of them is we added some required supplementary information schedules related to the OPEB / the SIP plan, the college insurance program issued through the SERS state agency. So we added some schedules there in the required supplementary section. There is a new note 7 is new for you guys. This was also provided by SERS. It's on their defined contribution pension plan, so that's new. And then note 12, as I talked about earlier, is the prior period adjustments. And overall, there was a net decrease to net position of $530,000. One of the prior period adjustments related to accrued compensated absence liability. There was another one related to the student financial aid grants. And then the third one was related to the calculation of the bond premium amortization. And then something else that is new is note 13 is on the component unit, which is the foundation of Lewis and Clark. It's just kind of industry's practice to include some of the significant foundation footnotes into the college report. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop because the foundation is reported also on the financial statements in the front. All right, any questions before I move on? I just have some charts and graphs, all right?
I mean, I hate to ask this, so if you can't answer this like in a sentence or whatever, what would have caused the decrease in the on behalf?
That is a good question.
I mean-
So I did kind of look into it a little bit because every college that we have experienced that decrease this year.
Yeah.
And I really couldn't find anything. I just found out just that, they have an independent actuary that
Okay.
comes in and determines the state contribution using a formula that's in the Illinois compiled statutes.
Okay, so it's
So I'm
based
not-
on actuarial science then?
Yes, and
Okay.
something and there's the formulas in the compiled statute, so I'm not sure.
Okay, let's leave
They're
it at
trying to
that.
reach a funded status of 90% by 2045. So I'm wondering if, the market probably plays a part in some of those fluctuations. But we did see, all of our colleges did experience a significant decrease this year,
Okay. Well,
where in the past it had usually been an increase, so
I'm
yeah.
guessing I'll be dead by the time that's fully funded.
Right.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question on note 12,
Yes.
prior period adjustments. Is that just kind of a routine thing that happens every year?
No, we hope not to have any more going forward unless there's like a new audit or a new accounting standard that comes out that would trigger that. These are just some things that we noticed when we came in and we're looking at the books that were missing, or maybe we didn't agree with the calculations in accordance with the government accounting standards.
So it's just something like in the transition from our prior auditors to you guys?
Yeah.
Something you found that needed to be fixed?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So we would consider these errors more of a correction of an error, prior period finding. We did have a new standard this year that was effective. It was GASB 87 on leases, but it didn't have a material impact for you guys, so it did not result in a prior period adjustment for that. But next year, actually I'm going to talk about that. We have some coming up that might affect that number. All right. So I just like to show the revenues by source. It's probably no surprise to you, but your number one revenue source is local taxes. That would be property taxes and replacement taxes, which there was a surprisingly large increase in replacement taxes this year, which was experienced kind of across the board as well for all the colleges. I don't know if you guys remember a few years ago, at one point the state wanted a refund of replacement taxes. They're saying they had overpaid. So I had some colleges this year that were a little skeptical on accepting the additional funds from them. They're just kind of wondering, but hopefully that's not the case here. Just never know with the state. All right, so, and then your other, I just kind of highlighted some of your major federal, or your major sources. So federal grants is number 2, and then the SERS and SIP on behalf payments are actually number 3 for you guys. And then same thing with expenditures. Here we have it by function, so, you know, probably no surprise, instruction is the number 1 cost of the college at 28.6%, and then we have the institutional support and the operations and maintenance cost. That's your top 3 there. All right. And so just as, you know, we look at credit hours, we test them as part of our audit, so this is what is submitted to ICCB as reimbursable credit hours, and then we just did a 5-year trend where you can see that the credit hours have decreased approximately 36,000 from 5 years ago. Student fees and scholarships are reported net of the, student tuition and fees are reported net of scholarship allowance, and it was about $5 million this year, which is about 6.2% of your total revenues, as you can see on that other slide. The assessed valuation and for your property taxes, so this is by levy year. And so it has, you can kind of see it goes up every year, very steady, it's kind of going up. But then it's kind of interesting because then usually we see a lot of the tax rates will kind of be level, but you guys are actually kind of trending down a little bit. But I'm probably still bringing in the resources that you need because the assessed valuations are going up. All right, I wanted to pause here on some pending accounting pronouncements. So there's a big one coming out this year for GASB 96, and this is similar to the lease standard. I'm not sure if you were familiar with that one, but where you kind of have to calculate a present value amount for the right to use asset. The lease was more for tangible assets, so this GASB 96 is more related to technology agreements. So in the past, you know, people used to buy software. Now you kind of license it and you rent it. It's not, you don't own it anymore. And so this is kind of the way of trying to get you to capitalize those costs and depreciate them, or in this case, you'd amortize it over the life of that term, of that contract. So there's might be a lot of those with the college. So, you know, just working with Mary, we do have in our letter that we issue, we do have maybe some tips on ways to prepare for that new standard to come out. And we can always help assist if you guys want with those calculations. And I know Mary did a good job compiling leases for us this year, so I'm hoping she can do the same thing for all these IT contracts. And then the next one that I thought would be most impactful would be this GASB 101 on compensated absences. It's not effective for a few years, but it's just going to provide some more guidance on that. And so now that we are recording that accrued compensated absence liability, this will affect you guys that way. So more to come on that one. All right, and then so with the letter that we issued, I just wanted to kind of touch base on the findings and maybe some of the suggestions that we gave. So the one finding that we had, and this would be near the end of the bound report, it's called a Schedule of Findings and Question Cost, but this is related to reporting. So with the HERF grant, it's a new grant, so everyone's trying to learn all the workings of it and the stipulations. And so there's a quarterly report that is due 10 days after the end of the quarter. And so this is kind of where, like I said, we had other colleges that had the same issue, just trying to gather that information, kind of close out the books for the month, and get that report submitted on time. And so there were, we tested 1 quarter of the student reporting and 1 quarter of the institutional HERF reporting, and they were both late. And so that's kind of where the finding stems from. But I think the colleges, I think they were pretty close to being done with that grant, but we will follow up on this comment next year. But we do plan to, next year would be the student financial aid testing would probably be where that would go back to the major program. And then in the actual letter, I wanted to kind of clarify. So we do have some, like what I'm going to call generic management letter comments, where it's just more like business advice, or sort of talking about, you know, the planning and preparing for GASB 96. And then there's also a GASB implementation guide that came out that said capital assets in the aggregate need to start to be capitalized together. So if you bought $1,000 or $100,000 of computers, you would now need to like capitalize those in aggregate, where before computers normally would fall under your capitalization threshold. And just because there was a new standard with the GASB 87 on leases, we would recommend, similar to your capital asset policy, you would have a written lease policy where you'd have a threshold and say, okay, leases, over this amount, it could either be based on an annual payment or the payments over the life of the term of the whole contract. And then probably, if you think about, doing something similar for the GASB 96 IT contracts, having like a policy where there's like a threshold where you kind of determine this is what is important to our college, anything over this amount. And then we had a couple management letter comments that were specific to Lewis and Clark. One of them is just on the unspent bond proceeds, and really the title of this could have been unspent bond proceeds and capital purchases with bond proceeds. So there's a calculation in the report that we need that information for, and I know working with Mary, it's not super easily accessible. She could find it, but it had required some digging. So we just would recommend that this is something that you would keep a running total for those two items for the reporting purposes. And then we did have just a small little issue, and that's why these are just considered management letter comments. They're not findings, they're not significant deficiencies or anything like that. But just with the reconciliation of the capital asset schedules, so when we first got them, they didn't tie to the trial balance. So we just recommend that maybe a second review be done on those schedules to make sure that they tie to the financial records. And that is all I got.
I don't quite understand. Could you go over the unspent bond proceeds comment?
Yes. So there's a calculation in the report. It's on the statement of net position, and it's called the investment in capital assets. And in order to get that number, we have to take the capital assets minus the related debt. But we also have to take into consideration what part of that debt was used for capital asset purchases, and then we also have to take into consideration what part is not spent yet. So if you issued a bond, say I know you guys had some bonds, so that's a $7 million bond, and you're going to use it for capital assets, but you haven't purchased them yet or spent it yet, then you would need to subtract out the unspent portion from the remaining debt in order to get to your investment in capital asset number. And so that information is just needed like a running total. So I know there's some bonds that were issued maybe 2-3 years ago, and they might still have some remaining unspent proceeds as well. So we have to just consider all of that information in that calculation. So any bonds that still have an outstanding liability, we would need to consider any unspent proceeds related to them.
Yeah, the biggest amount is the I don't know, 10 million or 10 billion, whatever it is for the main complex that hasn't been spent yet. Is that a part of what you're talking about?
It is, yeah. And I want to say, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was maybe a little bit from, was it the 2017 bond or 2015 bond that still had a little bit of unspent proceeds as well that we kind of had to consider for that calculation as well.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? Thank you very much, and I want to commend Mary's staff for doing a good job and all the hard work, and we appreciate all your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Traska, you have the budget, health, and enrollment updates.
Sure, so I'll start with the budget health updates. It's some general comments on that, and then Dr. Jackson will come up and provide the enrollment update. So our projections this month are based on mid-fiscal year totals, December 31st. As compared to the prior December, our actual revenues are up in almost all categories, both in the education fund and the operations and maintenance fund. Transfers from the funds into the education fund, which would include indirect costs from grants, is slightly down from December of last fiscal year. Most of our expenses are remaining very close to expenses last year, with the exception of a few line items. We are seeing increases from this time last year in utilities, general materials and supplies, and conferences and meetings. We are continuing to anticipate being under budget in our operating expenses, while several of our operating revenues are projected to be over budget. These revenues include the corporate personal property replacement tax, the CPPRT, which was also mentioned last month, tuition and fees revenue, and other revenue in the operational and maintenance fund, which includes building rental revenues. So overall, we still continue to be steady in our revenue over expenses. I again want to commend the team for really sort of embracing, a more leaner, focused approach to the work. And I think, as you'll hear in our next report on enrollment, that's beginning to turn in a positive way after many of our strategies and approaches to creating more access and flexibility within our work is becoming real, as we're seeing in the data. So, Dr. Jackson, I'll leave it to you if there aren't any questions on the budget.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So the information that I'll be providing is from our 10th day report as of February 4th, 2023. Reporting for summer 2023 will begin on February 20th, and then fall 23 on March 20th. So our 10-day report was for total head count of 4,007 students. So it was a difference, an increase in 9.6% year over year. Total credit hours, 32,869, which was a 5% increase year over year. So as Dr. Traska said, we are moving in the right direction. Enrollment continues to increase. Of course, we know we still have to continue to work hard, and we will not slow down just because we have this small win. However, we do have to celebrate the small win, so that's what we are doing. However, we are going to continue to implement new strategies, tap into those populations that we know are still looking for higher education. We, of course, love our high school population, our district high schools. However, we know that now we have to start even younger. So we are tapping into our middle schools. We're looking at adult populations that are looking to possibly change careers or just get some type of credential. So we are working with our recruiter to get out in the community and reach out to those populations. Speaking of that, we do have Discover Day. It's on Monday, February 20th. Based on feedback from the community, our own team members, high schools, we have moved the time. Usually it's throughout the day. However, this time we have moved it to the afternoon. It's 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. So our hope is that even though families and students are going to visit other schools, that on their way home that they do stop off to visit Lewis and Clark. So we welcome everyone. We welcome the community, our high school students, middle school students. So any questions?
I just want to say, I think it's a big win, not a
Yes.
small win. And I want to say, yeehaw!
Thank you. We appreciate it. It's definitely a team effort. We have
Yes.
great team members.
Yes.
We have people that are committed. So yes, thank you.
And it's hard to put our finger on one specific thing that has done this because this has been a multifaceted approach. Everything is focused on increasing enrollment, so
Yes.
brand change, recruiting, everything.
Yes.
So, it's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharice.
Okay, the omnibus agenda is presented for a vote. Is there any item the board would like to be held out and voted separately?
I'd like to consider item H as in Hanfelder separately.
Okay. So we will hold out item H. Do I have a first and a second?
So move.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's call the roll.
Barker,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Okay, and now we'll consider item H, which is bid information. Do I have a first and second? All right, any discussion?
Yeah, I have a few questions on that. The first bid, bid 0923, just wondering why the lowest bidder wasn't selected.
I'm going to defer that, Mary, your team. But I can tell you that oftentimes the lowest bid isn't selected if it's a matter of quality or there's a certain experience with that vendor, but I'll defer to the team member who might be able to answer that. I don't know if Brett's on.
I am on. I think there's a possibility that it was my understanding that the Burco was the lower bid, and is it possible that the number that we listed for JF Telecom might not entirely be the correct number?
I think are we waiting for Mary?
No.
I could go.
I think Brett just said, what did Brett
Brett.
say? I didn't hear
Can you hear me? I'm on. There we go. Good evening. I was under the impression actually that the Burco was the lower bid. We advised in the purchasing process that we were interested in pursuing the lower bid. I think it might be possible. I don't have the bid documents right in front of me, excuse me, but it might be possible that the number there might have been mistyped when we put it in. But let me see if I can find that document now. But we were under the impression that we were pursuing the lowest bid.
Thanks, Brett.
I didn't get that. Did you get that?
He thinks it might be a typo.
Okay.
You want to go? He thought they did have the lowest. You want to go to the next one, maybe they can
So,
clarify.
yeah, maybe you can clarify it in a few minutes here. I have another question on the bid for the trucks for NGREC. I noticed that all the bids, well, I should say, the one bid came from a Ford dealership, and the other three people that didn't bid were also Fords. I'm wondering why Ford trucks? I mean, nothing against Ford trucks, but there are other trucks out there.
I would say that's just a matter of who's responding to that bid particularly, but I don't know if anyone from the NGREC team has any comments on that, or Brett or Mary, who oversee that process on the campus, could help us out.
There actually is no preference for Ford trucks, but those were the bids that were received. And plus, only some dealers can bid at the fleet pricing. And so to get a reduced price, those dealerships often get the bid because that's basically the lowest price you can get. But that's really all we know about it.
Could you name any of the Chevrolet dealerships that were requested to quote on this bid?
Well, the bid went out at large, so, all dealerships had the opportunity, I assume, to bid, but no, I cannot.
Well, it seemed like there would be a whole list of vendors that with no quote, not just 3 Ford vendors.
Yeah, I would say on that, I think, Kevin, it's not uncommon for folks to receive a bid or RFP and just say, nah, we're not going to go for this. And they wouldn't let us know that. They just pass it up. Yeah, so, yeah, that's my typical understanding. I mean, some could acknowledge the RFP, and that's what happens, I believe, in a no quote, but, and then, like I think Gary said, there are some dealers that just aren't interested. I mean, I've seen that a number of times, especially with specialized systems or units or vehicles.
I don't believe, based on other vehicles we've purchased, that there's any bias within the system. I think what it is that certain dealerships can offer fleet pricing, which other dealerships are not competitive with that. So you end up with basically just a few dealers really having the primary option of selling these kind of fleet vehicles to the state. So I think that's what it is, but I don't know exactly. I didn't handle this.
Yep, and you're not responsible for requesting the bids, right? Isn't that Mary's deal?
We're not, yeah.
I can jump in, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah, the previous vehicles that we have at NGREC that were purchased were all my understanding, purchased through the fleet process, and those are Ford vehicles. So we were continuing with the purchase of the Ford F-150 and then the request for the Explorer because we have a need for non-truck capacity. Whenever individuals are out in the field and they don't need to have the trailer or a boat behind them. So that was my understanding, and maybe that was my error, but that we were told that the fleet pricing was through the Ford, and that's why I think we only had the one bid that came back.
I'm pretty sure that Chevrolets can be purchased under a fleet program. Okay. Yeah, it does. And any reason why these other 3 Ford dealers didn't quote? I mean, Roberts is, he's a friend of this community college, right?
Sir, I don't know.
Yeah.
My own preference, I would like to see Illinois businesses, certainly, but no, they did not return bids.
We can't force them to bid if they don't want to, right?
Right. And I asked, I said, can we double check and make sure? And we were told there was only the one bid, so unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Did we find out if we had a typo on the Burco bid?
Yes, I have. Yeah, and yes, we do have a typo. The bid is for $669,960, not $699,960. I'm sorry, did you hear that? So there is a small typo.
Yes,
It's a
Fred, we
digit.
heard it.
Okay.
What is it, 679?
669,960 is the bid for Burco, and it is the lower bid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's call the roll.
Barker,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder.
Yes.
Motion passed. All right, let's go on to action items. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 23-7, authorizing extension of faculty probationary period?
So move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, call the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 23-8, authorizing property tax abatement?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve the Rank and Promotion Committee's nomination of Associate Professor of Welding, Travis Jumper, to be the Lewis and Clark Community College nominee for the 2023 ICCTA Outstanding Full-Time Faculty Award?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. Call for the vote?
Barker,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Enthusiastic, yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the Rank and Promotion Committee's nomination of adjunct faculty member Paula Holloway to be the Lewis and Clark Community College nominee for the 2023 ICCTA Outstanding Adjunct Faculty Award?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve designation of the president to prepare a budget in tentative form for FY 2024?
I'll make the motion.
Second. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve physical or financial hardship policy?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? This is one of those that's to put us in compliance with the state, right?
Yep,
Okay.
yes. And Sharice and Mary could talk more specifically on that, but yes.
Okay, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve the amendment to the sick leave policy 101?
Second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
McCain, Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve the amendment to the family medical leave policy 102?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Griffin, McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve amendment to bereavement leave policy 107?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Griffin, Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve amendment to vacation leave policy 109?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve amendment to remote work policy 510?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. And thank everybody out there who worked hard on these policies.
Yep. And this is part of, I mean, we have an ongoing review of policies that, you know, just so everyone knows, the board receives these for review. So there's a familiarity with the policy. If you're wondering why there's probably no comments, so it's good to know. But a lot of these too have to do with being in compliance with shifts in state law, et cetera. So we'll have more to come. So thank you for your support on these.
Okay, do I have a motion to authorize the president to enter into intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Godfrey for the use of the college's baseball fields, with exception to the 2 fields used by the college on Stamper Lane until December 31st, 2028?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, vote, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve organization restructure of the Family Health Clinic?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I think it's important to make some comments here. This has been a process, the board's aware of this, that has extended well over 1 year to really evaluate, quite frankly, all operations on campus. And the goal here is not to sort of, cut sort of services to students or community, but to really sort of abbreviate those. In this proposal, we are keeping on a registered nurse and just sort of limiting those services to focus more on mental health, first aid, sort of general things, but looking still at strengthening our partnerships with local healthcare providers, which is also part of this decision. There are more providers around us, so a lot of times, whether it's our students or community members, they have access to those. But this doesn't mean that we're moving away from this. We're just looking at it in a different way, and we will net around $335,000 in savings, which the good news with that is we're going to reinvest those dollars into student support services and other programs and services that support our student experience. So I want to thank the team and the board for their guidance and patience. There's been multiple renditions of this proposal. We've surveyed team members, we've surveyed students, and brought all of that data together to make an informed decision. So I want to thank Dr. Artis and her team, and even those team members who may have been affected by this. I mean, having had those discussions, they know they're valued team members and that we made a decision that was in the best interest of the institution moving forward. So I just want to thank everyone involved and appreciate the support. So thank you.
Okay, call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Griffin. Yes. McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Motion carried. All right. Do I have a motion to accept the resignation of board member Charles Hanfelder and declare a board vacancy?
So move with great sadness.
Second. All right. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hanfelder,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
McCain.
Yes.
Couldn't get mine to light up.
So, yeah, I probably should have done this during comments, but, certainly want to thank Mr. Hanfelder for his leadership on the board. I've only been on the board a little over 2 years as president, or I've been at president working with the board, and just appreciate Chuck. Chuck didn't have a lot of questions, but when he did, they were good questions, and I just appreciate his leadership and support because I can't recall really anything that he hasn't supported, and just appreciate his trust in the work, which can oftentimes be complicated and dynamic. So thank you, sir. I do have a plaque for you and a really cool Lewis and Clark sweatshirt that we haven't been able to give you yet. So appreciate your service and wish you all the very best in health and spirit. Thank you. Hope to see him wearing this around town everywhere he goes. There you are.
Well, if I might, President Truska just presented me with a plaque, more than overdoing it, but what the inscription says, Lewis and Clark Community College, Discover, presented to Mr. Chuck Hanfelder in appreciation for distinguished service, Lewis and Clark Community College, Board of Trustees and Assistant Secretary, April 25th, 2019 to February 14th, 2023. And then it has the inscription of the board members, and they are certainly worthy of mentioning. Julie Johnson is our chairman. Kevin Rust, to my left, is secretary. And of course, I was assistant secretary. Brenda McCain, Brenda, member, and Dwight Wertz, who's not here, and Larry Trent, good friend, Jill Griffith, my member, and Joel Barber, our student trustee. And the college is being steered by the able president, Mr. Ken Truska. Thank you all.
We'll move on to our informational items. Dr. Traska, is there anything you would like to highlight in the informational items?
I know that Dr. Artis would like to acknowledge the recognition reports, but if there are any specific questions on any of the items A through E, please let me know. So thank you.
Just a quick recognition. This month we have two individuals who were spotlighted. Sammy Ersch, whose name has been on this report before, for her work with our athletic students. And she is an academic advisor and just got a note from a faculty member about demonstrating how she goes above and beyond to help our students find solutions. And we wanted to recognize Dawn Zadolik, who is our coordinator of West. One of the examples used is she's obviously helping as we're transitioning and looking at that current structure and that model, but also the fact that she came in over the holiday break to proctor a test for a student. So just want to give them some recognition. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.
Have our leadership team reports?
Yeah, so I'll provide a brief president report here, just a couple of things. As everyone is well aware, we have our Higher Learning Commission visit April 3rd and 4th of this year, and our portfolio of evidence and narrative, which cuts across 5 criterion, is due on March 6th. So I want to thank our team who's been involved in that work. Right now, there's reviews going on and edits going on to be sure that that document is ready for the March 6th submission. Once we have that submitted, we'll work directly with our liaison at the HLC who will be leading the visit, and we'll work out a schedule which the board would have a part in that, as well as team members across campus. You know, as we do on every second Tuesday, as we host an all-team meeting, today we had which was great because there's a lot going on, but we typically have over 100. Today we had about 116 team members on the meeting, and we talked through the board meeting and other great things that are happening on campus. And I, of course, warned the campus that they'll be getting a long update from me, which is based on the update that I provide the board on a monthly basis as well. One of the things we've been really doing is focusing on the culture of the campus and continuing to build strength across our team. I'm a big believer that this is really what underpins the success that we're seeing. You know, it's oftentimes complicated work, but we are continuing to move forward in really positive ways, and I just want to thank the team for that. So on March 3rd, we do have an all-team appreciation day, so we'll kind of pull everybody on campus together for a couple of hours and have some opportunity for them to connect in a more informal way. Our main complex mover team continues to move forward. Our architect has been on campus quite regularly, meeting with student groups and team groups, and I think we're getting close to some recommendations from the architects. I think next month maybe, or maybe the month after, the Hastings and Chevette will be back to sort of present that draft work, but I'll keep the board informed in between between now and then to let you know sort of what's being developed by them. So just keep a lookout on that. The other thing too is you know it's always heartbreaking to see what's happening in the news, and of course what happened yesterday at the University of Michigan, and that's prompted us as a leadership team. I mean, there's never a right time to do this, but we want to revisit some of the training and protocols that we have on Lewis and Clark's campus for active shooters, et cetera. So we're meeting this week as a leadership team, which was already scheduled, but we're going to have a little bit of a discussion with our campus safety director, Brad Raish, who's going to help lead that discussion. We have some great protocols and practices in place, but it never hurts to reinforce those and to be sure that all levels of our campus community is aware of protocols and practices to be sure that we keep our campus as safe as possible for our team members and, of course, for our students and community. One of the other things I wanted to highlight, and I believe Dr. Sawinski will probably talk more about this next month, kind of piggybacks off the visit, which we had last week by Dr. Arthur Levine, author of the book, The Great Upheaval. So he really came and did a wonderful job in many ways of reinforcing the strategies that we've put in place the last couple of years with a very intentional focus of broadening access to Lewis and Clark and really finding ways to truly meet students where they're at, no matter what, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, but how can we better serve students? And so Arthur's visit really helped reinforce that. That talk is available to the community and, of course, to our campus now, and I think there's an article coming out, if it's not already out, where there are some live links. So we hope that if you were unable to see that, that you'll be able to watch that, and hopefully it'll sort of enrich and broaden your perspective around the work that LC is doing. But one of the big parts of our vision and direction is really looking at this competency-based education model, models such as BlendFlex as well. But our CBE model is sort of like, looking at competency, rather than just credit hours. And so we're testing for competency, allowing students to sort of move through a program at their own pace. So if we have a 2-year program, it might take, if all of us in this room are in a program, we're sort of saying, well, it's going to take you no less than 2 years. But if you're able to move through a CBE pathway, which would complement our traditional pathway, some of us may take a year, some of us may take a year and a half, but what that does is it provides an opportunity for students to move forward at their own pace. In addition to that, we can do a little bit more customization, and I believe Dr. Jackson alluded to stackable credentialing and other ways in which we can create that flexibility and agility in our programs. So I'm just proud of the work the team's been doing. It takes every single one of us at every single level of the organization to move forward. So we'll have more updates on the progress there, the programs that are beginning to develop CBE pathways in their programs, in addition to some of the other exciting work that's happening. So I know there's one other announcement from NGREC, and I'll let Paige do that, but I again just want to end my comments by thanking the board, of course, thanking Trustee Hanfelder for his service on the board, and we just look forward to continuing to move forward in positive ways. So thank you, and Paige, I'll leave it to you for the final word.
Hello again. Happy Valentine's Day. We had 2 pieces of really, really exciting news this week at NGREC. This past year, our Education Division and our Riverwatch Division both received funding to have short documentary videos produced. In education, the documentary focused on a group of students from the TRIO program at SIUE that we hosted last summer at the station for an entire week. And a film was produced out of that. Another one that was produced through our Riverwatch program focused on our muscle monitoring program that looked at the importance of citizen science and the role of our communities in helping us engage in science. What we found out is that both were accepted to the World Water Festival at the United Nations. That's the first piece of good news. The second piece of good news that we just found out today is that the Grubbing for Mussels documentary from Riverwatch is going to lead the United Nations Water Festival. They're going to open with that, and that'll be March 19th. So, yay, it was very, very exciting.
Thank you so much, Paige, and congratulations.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session? Second. Okay. Call for the vote.
Barker,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried.